Now, since we know a little bit more about virtual environment, it's time to create our own virtual environment. You can open up your terminal or just open up any folder inside your PC. So here, this is my terminal, and inside my user directory, I want to create one more directory. So let me create, and I'm going to name my directory as Django Polls. Let me go inside my Django Polls directory. Now let's see how we can create a virtual environment inside this directory. Now, instead of just showing you how to create a virtual environment, let me show you how you can find and how you can learn on yourself about all of these things. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to learn how to read the official documentation. Always remember that you don't become a professional and then read the documentation. You always first read the documentation and then you become a professional developer. So here we are. So as you can see, this is just python.org. Now click on the documentation, and here you can see we have a button for the Python docs. Now here, let me just search for VENV. So this stands for virtual environment. Now look, we have a couple of links. Let me click on this one. So let me zoom inside. So here we can see that VENV, this is for the creation of virtual environments. Let me scroll a little bit down, and here you can see that we have a lot of stuff related to virtual environments. And this thing in particular, since this is highlighted, this looks a little bit important to me. So what is this talking about? So this is saying about the user guide for creating and using virtual environments. Yes, so this is what we want. We want to learn how to create a virtual environment. That's right. So they have a couple of different tabs. So this is for the Unix, or if you're using a Mac like me, and this is for Windows. Now since I'm using a Mac, let me just copy this, and let me go to my terminal. Now remember, if you are working on Windows, just copy this command, and let me go to my terminal. Let me paste the command. Before we run the command, I would like to explain what's exactly happening. So what we are doing is we are saying Python, and -m stands for the built-in modules. And what we want to do is, from the inbuilt modules of your Python 3, we want to use the module of VENV to create another virtual environment, and we want to name the virtual environment as ENV. So this is what this entire command is all about. And now let me run the command. So what Python has done is, in the background, it has created a virtual environment. If I just do ls, you can see that we have one directory called as ENV inside our Django Polls folder. Now let's go back and let us see how we can activate our virtual environment. So we are back. So remember, if you are using Windows, always copy these commands. I'm using Mac, so I'm using these commands. So if you scroll a little bit down, here you can see that we have a section for activating a virtual environment. Now again, since I'm using Mac, let me copy this command. If you are using Windows, just copy this command. Let us go back to our terminal. Let me paste this. And again, before I run this, let me try and explain what exactly is happening. So what I'm trying to do is, I want you to go inside this ENV directory. So we just saw in the last step that Python has created another directory called as ENV. Now inside that ENV directory, there's another directory for the bin or for the binary. And inside the binary, I would like to activate my virtual environment. So this is what this command is doing. And here you can see that my prompt has changed. On the left, my terminal is showing the name of the virtual environment. Now it's not mandatory to name your virtual environment as ENV. You can write anything. You can write ABC, or you can write the name of the project, or you can also write it as VENV. It all depends on you. So this is the way in which you can create a virtual environment and you can activate a virtual environment. But this was just one part of the puzzle. Now we have a virtual environment. The next part is about our dependency management. If you come from the world of npm or node, we have different package management systems like npm or yarn. In the world of Python, we have pip. So what we are going to do is we are going to say, hey pip, I simply want you to install Django inside my virtual environment. Now before you install Django, you should always remember to see if you have activated your virtual environment or not. Because we don't want to install Django globally. Instead, we want Django to be local just to our virtual environment. Now let me press enter. Now what this is going to do is your pip is going to go to wherever it has to go. It will collect Django and it is going to install Django inside our virtual environment. Now if you do ls again, you can see that we have just one directory. So where is Django? Well, let's see how we can figure this one out. So let me go to my Django documentation page. So in case if you're wondering how did I reach here, just go to your djangoproject.com and click on documentation. So here I am. So let us go to this tutorial and let us go to this part number 1, requests and responses. So it's saying that we assume that you have Django installed. So yes, we have Django installed. But can we check? Yes, we can check. Now again, they have two tabs. This is for your Mac and this is for the Windows. So let me copy this command and let me paste it inside my terminal. So yes, we have Django installed and at the time of recording, the Django version is 4.1.5. So let us go back. Now let us see how we can create an actual Django project. So here they are saying that creating a project. Now let's take a moment and let us try to understand what do we mean by a project. In the normal terms, when we say that we want to create an application, that application is called as a project inside the world of Django. And the sub projects or the sub modules or the parts of the project are called as applications. So we will see what to mean by an application inside Django a little while later. But let's create a Django project. So here you can see that we have one command. So let me just copy this command, Django admin start project my site. If you're using Windows, again you can use this one. Let me go back to my terminal. Let me clear up everything. Let me paste the command and let me press enter. Now if I do an ls, we can see that we have two directories. So this env is for our virtual environment and this, the newly created directory, is for our Django project. Now let's try to open up this project inside our code editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code. So I can simply write code. I wanted to open up the current directory and this is it. So let me zoom inside a little bit. So here we have two directories, env and my site. So as we have discussed, this is for the virtual environment and this one is for the Django project. So as you can see, we have a folder called as my site, and inside this folder we have another folder by the name of my site, and we have one file by the name of manage.py. Now if I click right over here, we can see that we have a lot of files which are inside this folder of my site. We will try to understand the folder and the file structure a little later in the tutorial series, but for now let us see if our Django is working or not. So let us go back to the official documentation page and let us try and find it out how we can actually run our Django project. So this is what we did in the last step. We started a project by the name of my site, and here they are discussing the folder structure which I have already shown you. We will discuss these things a little while later in the series. So the next thing is the development server. Now what happens with Django? Django already ships with a development server. Now please remember the word development. That means this server is designed to run only for development and not for production services. here we have this command. Let me copy this one, python manage.py run server. Again, if you are using Windows, make sure to copy this one. Let us go back to our terminal. Let me clear up everything. Let me paste the command and let me try to run this one. Oh, so we have some kind of an error, and let us see what error we are getting. The error is no such file or directory. Well, that is true. So if you do an ls command, you can see that there is no file by the name of manage.py. Now why is this happening? Now it's because we have created a Django project inside this folder of my site, or rather the Django admin command by default created this folder and installed Django project inside of this one. So what we need to do is we need to navigate inside our my site. So let me navigate inside the folder of my site. Let me clear up the screen. Now if I do an ls, yes, now we have this file of manage.py. So now here we can say that, hey Python, I want you to use the file of manage.py and I want you to run our server. See, now this is going to work. For now, just ignore these errors. Actually, these are not errors, these are warnings. We will see about this a little later in the series as well. But right now, just have a look at this message. So it is saying that starting development server at HTTP 127.0.0.1, and this 8000, this is the port number. So let me just click on this one, and here we are. So as you can see, we are getting the message that the install worked successfully. Congratulations. Woo! Finally, we have been able to create a virtual environment, and after creating the virtual environment, we use pip as our package manager to install Django, and after that we created a Django project, and finally this is what it looks like. Well, this was a very naive way of creating your virtual environments and installing Django. In the next video, I will show you how to use Poetry to create our dependency management, and we can have a slightly better structure of creating our Django projects.